Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Belén Gallego from ATA Insights, and I'm going to be your moderator today for this amazing webinar on dispatchable solar energy 24/7. And specifically, we're talking about a project, the Case of Bokpoort, the CSP plant in South Africa. So I am delighted to have with me today the Aqua team who are going to be speaking about this. And I'd like to welcome and actually allow both Nando and Cristo to introduce themselves so that you can get to know them a little better in case you don't. So Nando, please, could you unmute your microphone and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. Good morning from South Africa. This is Nando Bula. I'm currently the Deputy Managing Director for Aqua Power in Southern Africa. And I've also had the awesome opportunity of being the CEO of Bokpoort during construction, and now looking forward to future projects in the Aqua fraternity.
Thank you very much, Nando. And I'd like to ask also Cristo to introduce himself, please, so you get to know him better. Cristo?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Cristo Spalmer here from South Africa. I am currently the Chief Executive Officer for Bokpoort CSP. So as Nando explained, basically, now looking after construction, looking after the plant from an operations point of view, and then of course all the business aspects that is integrated with that. Thank you, and once again, good morning to everybody.
Thank you very much, Cristo. So we're talking about a very, very important topic today. I mean, when we look at all of these decarbonization objectives, we know that renewable is the way to go. However, with variable renewables, you do get the problem, right? That you have to start taking other measures in the system in order to be able to make sure that it's balanced, is dispatchable, is whenever you need the power. And CSP actually gets through a lot of these problems. So today, Nando and Cristo are going to be talking to us about this specific project that is working really well. So Nando, you are going to be the first presenting. So why don't you unmute your microphone and prepare your presentation? Whilst I tell people on the audience, the structure of this webinar is going to be really simple. We're going to hear a presentation from Nando and from Cristo, and then we are going to actually take questions from you at the end of the session. We have afforded some time for that, so please send them through the Q&A box that is at the bottom of the screen. Okay, we're going to take the questions through a Q&A box because it's easier for us to manage them. But you can continue chatting using the chat on the right-hand side. I see that there are people who woke up really early for this webinar. We have people from Colombia in here. We also have people from the UAE, from South Africa, from Tunis, from Sierra Leone, and welcome everyone. I do hope that in the future we have webinars with you talking about all the CSP projects of dispatchable solar that you're going to have in your countries. But for now, we are just going to go ahead and hear Nando's presentation. Just one more thing. We are recording this session and you're going to have access to the materials. So don't worry, we will send you an email with a link. And when you click on the link, you're going to be able to watch it again, to send it to your colleagues, and also to download the materials, okay? So Nando, please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Belén. Thanks a lot. And thank you, everybody. So I'm going to start with the introduction in terms of specifically Aqua and lay the concept, the context within which Bokpoort is doing so well and the rationale behind it. So if we just start just some background into Aqua, for those that know Aqua is essentially an international global company that is renowned for development of power and desalination plants. We have 58 assets around the world, producing close to 38 gigawatt power capacity and about 5.8 million cubic meters desalination water per day. Essentially a large organization, and the focus then shifted during the last 5 to 10 years towards the renewable sector, and the African region became a serious target region for that specific technology expansion. And the first place to start off would have been South Africa, and of course in Morocco, which is ideal in terms of both the resource and the financial structures within which to operate in. So from that perspective, Aqua is expanding into the continent, and we're looking forward to further developments in this regard. Just to go into the CSP side now specifically, and the rationale behind South Africa as a target destination. I put the slide together just to show the DNI areas where people can start expecting power plants of CSP technology to be developed. And essentially, it's around the tropics. And if you look in the north, typically where the US started pioneering with Spain and so on. And then now you see projects in North Africa, in Dubai, in the Middle East areas, and of course in India and so on. So that is your traditional Northern Hemisphere targeted regions. And then in the southern hemisphere, we hear a lot about Chile in terms of their resource, but South Africa is not far behind in terms of resource. And as you can see, we have quite a large DNI capability or DNI resource available to us to use and to exploit. And then there we also have Australia. So theoretically, South Africa has abundance of DNI capability, and therefore it is of course natural that we would look at construction and operation and inclusion in the DNI mix, in our energy mix, and particularly given the history of South Africa being a coal-dominated technology country, and renewables now coming into the fore. And we're hoping that CSP continues in that light. So just to give you some feedback in terms of the number of plants in the world, we're looking at about 3.5 gigawatts of plant under construction and already 6,000 megawatts in operation. And so the future is definitely bright as far as CSP is concerned. And just to give you some feel of what can be done, and in Equa's fleet, we have two very impressive facilities. The first one being the 510 CSP project in Morocco, in Ouarzazate, made up of 2 parabolic trough plants and 1 tower plant. And that is, of course, the largest single CSP facility in the world right now. And then, of course, within a couple of months to come, we would this would have been overtaken by the renowned Noor 1 energy facility in Dubai, where we have a different combination. We have three trough plants plus a tower, total 750 megawatts, and then additional of a PV hybrid facility, which is also now we see as the new future for the combination of CSP and PV. To take it more closer to South Africa and getting to Bokpoort, which we will then go into detail with, is that in South Africa, when the the Department of Energy started procuring for power and bringing renewables in, they started the REAP program. Everybody knows the REAP program is one of the most successful programs in the world as far as energy procurement is concerned from the renewable sector. We had 5 progressive rounds, a total of 6,300 megawatts, and 92 projects in total spread across the country. Of course, in the projects in terms of technology, the solar projects were dominated in the northwestern part of the country, which is where our high DNI radiation and GHI is. And then on the south coast and the east coast, we're looking at our wind projects. But in total, I think we have had significant improvements in terms of the technology integration into the network. We've had close to 200 billion rand invested over this period, and over 110,000 jobs per year created, which was, of course, the intent behind this program. Bokpoort was one of them, and if you look at the table below, of the 92 projects, there were in total 7 CSP projects that were procured over this period, which is exciting for us in South Africa. I think it makes South Africa one of the leading countries where we have, hopefully we'll have operational CSP focus with regards to developing the technology further. And you're looking at in bid window 2, which is the second round of the procurement program, is when Bokpoort was procured at 50 megawatts. And then from an Equa perspective, our second one, and which is soon to be under construction, is the Redstone project, which was the last in the current 7 of the procurement rounds that we've had so far. So we're very excited about that. And Bokpoort was one of the earlier pioneers of CSP in the country, and now in the 5th year of operation, of course. So just to give you some more details in terms of the different plants in South Africa, there's 7 in total, and I want to really focus mainly on the thermal storage capacity, which I think is one of the key factors in terms of the discussion that we're having today, in terms of dispatchability and 24/7 operation. And as you can see in the first round, the projects were looking at around 2.5 hours of thermal storage capacity, which allowed for, in the South African market, to cover the peaks, but not quite more than 2-3 hours of the peaks. And then Bokpoort was, I think, revolutionary in terms of that discussion, because immediately we came in with 9.3 hours, and we had a specific target in mind, and I'll explain that just now. And then subsequently, the other plants came in with around 4.5 to 5 hours of storage to meet the demand, as the understanding of the capabilities of CSP was clearly appreciated. And then our plan is, of course, with Redstone to really go with the 12-hour storage, and now taking it into the realms of a baseload operator. So as we see now, we believe that the shorter thermal storage options are therefore sort of a peaking kind of technology contribution, and the longer hours in terms of what we have at Bokpoort, for instance, 9 hours, are more seen to be close to baseload kind of load following, and we'll show how that was realized later in the presentation. So in terms of the two projects for Bokpoort, for Equa, we have Bokpoort, which is a 50 megawatt parabolic trough plant, essentially 9.3 hours of thermal storage, which was the key dominant factor that sets it apart from all other projects. And we're looking forward to setting new production records with it, and we'll explain some of them shortly. And then our second project, of course, is Redstone, which is the 100 megawatt tower project. We will be bringing in 12 hours of thermal storage in there, which will then therefore be able to do more of what we will show Bokpoort has already done. Just to give you some design basis in terms of where we come from, the concept of Bokpoort and the large storage was essentially considered with respect to the demand profile of South Africa. So I put the slide together to maybe give you some background in terms of the South African market and the South African needs in terms of the demand. And it might be similar to other countries, but in terms of South Africa, we have two distinct profiles in winter and in summer. In winter, of course, it's higher. The South African consumer demands are essentially based around winter heating as opposed to summer cooling. And so our demands are much higher in winter, and therefore we have the higher winter consumption period. But within the demand profile itself, we have a morning peak and an evening peak. And that essentially is what we need to manage with respect to dispatchability and capabilities from plants coming in. Traditionally, the South African market is covered with a base load of coal, quite a large base load of coal. And then the peaks are then managed through mid-merit kind of power plants, as well as peaking operating in terms of hydro, gas turbines, and pump storage. And this is where we believe that Bokpoort and CSP plants in general can cover pretty much the whole area and support the grid in very many ways. In terms of this, in the summer peaks are far more stable. However, there is still a little bit of a morning peak and an evening peak, and therefore you need to be able to cover that and be a consistent supplier of energy throughout the day. So the idea behind Bokpoort specifically took into these considerations. So we looked at the DNI, and of course the location of the plant is clear in terms of the DNI. We looked at grid connectivity to see where we are closest to the grid, so that we can also, from a transmission perspective, support the grid. We looked at the South African demand profiles, and then also the PPAs. In the first round one and round two, our PPAs that were offered to the developers was flat tariff PPAs. However, subsequent rounds then started dealing with tiered tariff PPAs and with a sort of a peak time multiplier, which allowed developers to then focus their attempt in terms of providing energy during the peak periods. And that is to try to get the highest load factor possible in that period. And for that, we required to look at our adequacy of our storage, and then also looking at what other grid supports we can do. And then taking it even further in terms of innovations going forward is looking at the possibility of hybridization to improve on both the energy production as well as the capacity. And so that is our essential design basis with Bokpoort. And what we said is with the 9 hours of storage, our potential would have been in twofold. Firstly, we could operate completely as a normal PV plant with morning raising the load in the morning and dropping in the evening, which would essentially be your CSP without storage. But with the 9 hour storage, we could actually at machine rated capacity produce from around morning 6 o'clock right up till about 10 o'clock at the flat load rate, and that is also a potential, and so it's easily flexible. However, the concept of 24/7 dispatchability comes in when you look at the profile, and our thought process is then to say we could run the plant such that during the evening peak, after having fully charged our thermal storage, we then take it down slightly to a lower load level up to 60% and preserve our energy in our thermal storage, and essentially ride through the night at that level. And as the demand picks up in the morning and we're coming into the morning peak, we then lift the load on the machine and continuously run. And that is essentially where the concept of a continuous running with adequate storage comes into play. And for us, that is the crux of what we have done at Bokpoort and what we have displayed. So from my perspective, I think I wanted to set some sort of a background and a context within which you will now see the performance of Bokpoort continue producing some amazing records, which Christo will take you through. So that is from my side. I now hand over to Christo to give you some of the details with respect to the Bokpoort plant.
Okay, once again, from my end, good morning to everybody. I'm just getting my screen sharing. There we go. So, Nandu, thank you so much for that introduction and for setting the scene. I would really like to now go through some of the specifics at Bokpoort and explain how we actually achieved the 24/7 operation, and also just focus a little bit on the great benefits that CSP technology with thermal storage actually provides in the country and in the industry in general. If we look at the CSP technology and maybe just a quick reflection, the collectors will focus the sun rays on the tubes that's got the heat transferring fluid, HTF, and that is then heated up and ultimately turns hot water into steam, which is used for turbine generation. But also during the day, it is used to charge the salt system. At night, when the sun is not there, the salt is then discharged. That in turn heats up the HTF again, and the same cycle is utilized then to generate steam for the turbine. The CSP parabolic trough really offers great advantages in the sense that it's a proven technology, and it's got an operational track record. It's also quite a mature technology and can literally be delivered in 30 months. And as the maturity grows, that period can even be made shorter. It then also creates a huge opportunity for local content, and we will talk a little bit more about that later on. And the only slight disadvantage is really that because of the extensive piping work in the solar field required, there are some energy loss that is associated with that. But what is quite important is the thermal storage, and the Bokpoort design specifically provides 9.3 hours thermal storage, and I will in the presentation then take you through how that is used to produce energy on a 24/7 basis. Currently, the 9.3 hour storage is the largest facility in Africa. And as Nandu alluded to, Redstone, that will be 12 hours of storage when that is constructed and completed. Just some of the important dates and milestones for the Bokpoort project. So financial close was reached on the 25th of June. And the first synchronization was on the 13th of November, which incidentally was also a Friday. And many people believe that, anything that happens on Friday the 13th brings bad luck. But in the case of Bokpoort and within the Bokpoort family, we believe that that's quite the opposite, given the performance of Bokpoort during the years. Commercial operation date was then the 19th of March 2016. Just some technical elements of the plant. The solar field has got 8 solar fields, just short of 242,000 mirrors installed. The trough technology is provided by Zener, and it was the first version of the Zener trough technology that was employed at Bokpoort. Steam generation is a single reed Siemens turbine, and the steam is delivered at a pressure of 103.6 bar at 380 degrees Celsius at turbine inlet. More importantly and more unique about Bokpoort is the thermal energy storage, which allows us to bank solar energy during the day and to release it at night. In order to achieve this and to make this happen, we've got the two large hot and cold tanks, and just in excess of 38,000 tons of salt. With regards to site location, again, as Nandu has indicated in his presentation, mainly the area was chosen because of the DMI capability, and other factors also considered was, Bokpoort is a wet cooling power plant, so we needed access to water. This is obtained from the Orange River, and then of course the plant is located close to a Eskom substation, so that the electricity can be evacuated. So those are some of the considerations for the plant location itself. Talking about records, immediately after commercial operation, the plant has already demonstrated that it can perform quite well, and it had a continuous run of 161 hours, which equates to 7 days. That was immediately after commercial operation. There was then a short break due to weather conditions, and operations resumed again for 111 hours, which equates to approximately 5 days. Right now, where we are at with Bokpoort is a very important stage in the project. We started negotiations with the lenders few months back in terms of refinancing of the project. And one of the key CPs for the refinancing was then to demonstrate and exceed on the design case for the plant. So during June, we had a very focused outage just to address some of the teething issues. And since the plant has returned from the June outage, it is over the past 5-6 months, it has demonstrated consistent performance, and it has outperformed the design case by 2.4%, and this was achieved towards the end of November. This is really a great achievement, and in us meeting this particular CP, and of course many others as well, I'm very delighted to also share with the audience today that we have successfully closed the refinancing deal yesterday, the 14th of December. If we then also look at some of the other records that was achieved over the past couple of months by Bokpoort, we've set a new all-time daily record of 1,077 megawatt hours. We also set a new all-time winter record, as well as consecutive running for 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, and then the 13-day continuous operation record I will talk a little bit more about. Of importance here is also that we are very focused to average around 1,000 or more megawatts per day. And this then allows us and sets us up for the continuous running, which we will talk about. In terms of the 13-day record that we've achieved, or 312 hours, the graph here demonstrates how this was really achieved. So during the day, we would use the energy from the solar field to run the turbine at about 50 megawatt. At the same time, the salt will be charged. And at night, when the sun has set, we will use the energy from the salt in terms of discharging the salt, and then run the plant at about 40 odd megawatt. In the morning, there will be a transition again, and then the process is repeated. And as indicated before, this really helps us then with a load profile of base load, which is very important, and also being able to supply energy during the peaks of summer as well as the peaks of winter. And this is done by the load following capability that the plant has got. Just to demonstrate a bit further in terms of how the transitions for 24/7 operation is achieved, if we look at the production summary and the graph here, if you just follow the red line with me, you'll see that during the night we run at close to about 40 megawatts. This is achieved based on the salt that are then discharged during the night. If you follow the green light, you can see here's the discharge of the salt. And in the morning, when the sun rises, we are then able to utilize energy from the solar field again to run up the turbine to a higher load of 50 megawatt net. And at the same time, during the day, the energy from the solar field is also used again to charge the salt. In the summer days, we are able to charge the salt to 100% capability. In the early evening, there's the transition period. And then again, by discharging the salt during the evening, we are able to run the turbine at loads of in excess of 40 megawatts. And then also when lower demand is required, we can reduce that even further. But this is really a typical summer's day and a typical demonstration of how the plant and the thermal storage capability is then used to run the plant on a 24/7 basis. This type of operation during summer months are achievable typically between October and March because of the long days during those couple of months. And what is also just key from an operations point of view is that the timing of these transitions in the morning and the timing of the transitions in the evening needs to be quite perfect. So ideally, you would like to have your salt discharged as much as you possibly can when you do the transition in the morning. On a winter day, a typical winter day, it's slightly different. Winter days are shorter, and therefore also the salt charge is only able to reach about 40 to 50% during a typical winter day. However, of importance is, again, the turbine will be run at full load during the day while we charge the salt. And in the evenings, when the sun sets, by discharging the salt, we are then able to still run in the evening well up to about 2200 in the evening. And this is quite important because, again, this helps us to meet the energy demand in South Africa during the peak period, especially in winter. The storage capacity can also be optimized to guarantee high load factors during peak, as I've already mentioned. Here you can see that the load factor varies. In a typical winter's day, it's 61, 67%, but in summer it goes up to 76%. This is great because this then sets us up to deliver at high load factors during the evening peak. And during off-peak, when we don't really need that, the capability of the plant is then at a lower load factor, which is exactly what we need in terms of the South African demand profile for electricity. I've touched earlier on the local opportunities, and really in the case of South Africa, if we can look at our economy of scale, this will really then also boost manufacturing. I mean, Bokpoort alone has contributed a value of approximately 1.6 billion locally. And this was approximately 40% of the project was locally spent during construction. Redstone will even offer a greater potential. But the important thing is if we can really grow the economy of scale in this country or any other country for that matter, it offers greater opportunities for local manufacturing and job creation. And that is really what we would like to set up in the country going forward. During the construction and few operation years of Bokpoort, the project has already achieved a number of awards in terms of being the African Community Project of the Year. In the energy sector, it achieved awards for innovation and for socio-economic upliftments. The socio-economic development is very important for us and will continue to be important for us. We live and work in the community, and therefore we would like to look after the community as best as we can through our socio-economic development initiatives. Here are just a few that's been listed. You know, there's some projects in terms of solar lighting for homes, providing drinking water to homes, and then very important and close, dear to our hearts, are skills development, which really starts from, you know, supporting creches in the local area, supporting schools in the local area, and also having a number of burses on further study programs. There's also lots of training initiatives, apprenticeships, and so forth. And also quite proud to say that from a local employment point of view, currently the operations team, about 60% of the operations team is employed locally from the Case municipality. Just a few concluding remarks on CSP technology itself, and especially if we take a view of South Africa that's got an viable solar resource available. You know, we should really have a long-term view on this technology. I say this because of the storage capability that it offers, and the storage capability then allows you to do the operations over a 24/7 basis, and it can be utilized for both baseload as well as load following, as was described in the presentation. This then really supports the electricity demand profile, especially in South Africa, and I would think in other countries as well, to be able to provide the baseload and to also be able to, during the peak periods, be able to provide that capacity. The technology can be deployed relatively quickly, as was explained, 30 months and even less. And as the technology further matures, we can expect more cost reduction, and as the learning curves also increase with the technology and the economies of scale further increases globally, this cost reductions will even grow more significant. The other great advantage of CSP technology is, of course, that this can hedge your fuel commodity prices, because there is no variation in fuel cost once the plant is up and running, which is quite different to your gas turbines, by example. And the hybrid solutions that it offers is really great, in that when you combine it with PV plants like the ones that Nandu explained earlier on, you also have the capability to still charge your salt systems during the day. When you have a very bad DNI for the day, you can still, you know, charge your salt through the PV plant. So these hybrid solutions also offer, you know, greater availability and also cost benefits. As I also mentioned, you know, for developing countries like South Africa and other countries in the world, the technology really offers great localization opportunities and manufacturing opportunities, which will in turn also allow for employment in the renewable sector. Last but not least, I think probably the most important is the consistent record-breaking performance of Bokpoort is really making a very strong case for CSPs to be included in any energy mix. And on that basis, I would say thank you very much and hand back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Christo. It was a very interesting and comprehensive presentation. So thank you very much to the two of you. I think you've given a really good description, of the market in South Africa, of the possibilities of the technology, and we've all learned a great deal. We do have a number of questions. Some of them Nando has already been answering. They were very specific, but we also have a little bit more contextual questions that I'd like to ask you now. And I see like the level of understanding of CSP, there is all sorts of people. I can see people that you probably both know and I know and have been in the industry for a long time. And then we have people who are not very familiar with CSP yet, but they may be looking into the possibilities in their own countries to deploy this technology. So I think it's important that we also talk about those issues, and those questions. So one of the questions that we have both on the chat a couple of times is, this technology, can we deploy it in Southern Europe, in Spain? Hang on. Let me see if I find it. Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, especially efficient storage. They make one thing as an efficient storage. So do you want to, now that you have the experience in South Africa, do you want to talk about, the opportunities in other markets to make this a possibility? Perhaps you're already working in some of them. So Nandu, I don't know if you want to answer this one. And then just get specific. Yeah.
I can try. I think the markets are open in terms of your resource. So depending on the resource availability, I think certain technologies are very open to be used in that sectors. Of course, there's specific areas, like I mentioned, in the tropics where the DNI levels are much higher. And therefore, for the technology we're talking about, your yield will probably be higher. And so it makes it much more bankable from a project finance kind of deal basis. However, in Spain and so on, you've seen it. Spain's, I hate to say it, but Spain's DNI is probably the same at their highest, is probably the lowest in South Africa. So, and Spain are the pioneers in this technology. So there is no reason why it should not be possible in different markets. And then I think the latest trend in Spain in terms of taking CSP plants and then retrofitting storage and so on is taking on a lot of encouraging progress. And in different countries in Northern Europe as well, I think there's possibilities are there. And then hybridizing it, as Christo was saying, hybridizing it with PV and other technologies does help a lot. CSP has the benefit of the large storage and actually cost-effective storage. You're looking at 9-10 hours of storage. There's not much better that you can do apart from CSP. So if you hybridize it, you can actually focus on developing a far more stronger business case. And that can be applicable at any areas, especially where you have significant GHI resource to be able to justify PV hybridization. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it was exactly, it answers it very well. There are people here from Tunis, from Egypt, from Turkey. You guys have pretty good DNI. You do have to look into it and what it is in this specific place, but the DNIs are better than Spain, and Spain will have quite a bit of development, but it's certainly not the best DNI. And they're developing a huge plant now in the UAE. Actually, these guys here as well, your team members, and the DNI there is also like around the 2,200s. No, so it's like a lot lower than it is in South Africa. Plus, one of the cheapest. It's actually the cheapest CSP plants ever built. Correct,
yes.
Nandu?
Yes, currently.
So there is a lot that you can do in that. Okay, let's go with more questions because we have a few. So there is a question here that is really good, I think. Robert asks, what LCOE are we talking about? We avoided, putting a specific, but do you want to talk a little bit about, what it was, how it evolved, and then how we've seen in other countries? Nandu, Christo, whomever of you wants to take it, I'm happy with that. We cannot hear you though, Nandu, because your microphone is off. Yeah.
Sorry, I was speaking with it unmuted. No, I said the LCO question is always being tabled, and it's very difficult because you need to try to see like for like kind of discussions. But I think if you look at just the bidding and the competitive processes that are out there in the markets, you'll be able to see that, for instance, in South Africa, the seven projects, we started off in the bidding environment where on a competitive bid basis, the prices were in the region. I'll talk in US cents. You're looking at around 23, 22 US cents, which about 5-6 years ago. And as you progressed and as the rounds progressed, we came down to maybe about between 10 and 12 US cents in terms of the comparative tariff. So you're looking at around a 45% decrease over a period of 5 years, and only with about 600 megawatts installed in the country. And at the same time, I think you're looking at PV in our country going also from a similar starting point, but dropping down to, as you know, almost single digit US cents, in fact, very low single digit US cent costing. So it finds itself in terms of, in my opinion, it finds itself in terms of economies of scale as well as allocation. So in the South African environment, one of the things we're talking about is trying to increase. South Africa procurement came in with limitation on size. So you'll find strategically all of the CSP plants are between 50 and 100 megawatts, nothing more. That's because each developer was given a specific size limitation. And so in that basis, you are almost curbing innovation and curbing development and curbing the opportunities to reduce the cost and development going forward. If you now look at Dubai on the other side, you're looking at the 750 megawatt facility. Your total costing on that basis comes down considerably. So I think it's a factor of many things: the size, economies of scale, and then of course the PPA itself. One of the biggest issues I have in terms of the pricing we see in the market, and I talk about pricing. I know everybody's looking at life cycle costs, but pricing is what drives the projects and nothing else. I mean, so if you can deliver a project at the price, it doesn't matter what the LCOE was, but it depends on what your financing capabilities are, the whole round project deal to be able to financially close. And that's why I talk about price in that perspective. And if you bring in the concept of PPA discussion, in South Africa, we put in an objection to say the first PPAs came in at 20 years, aligned to PV and wind. And we believe that solar thermal is actually not the PV wind type of technology and more attuned to the thermals, conventional thermal and gas turbines, and they have a lifespan of 35 years. So there should be consideration of longer PPAs, which then in itself will lead to much more, let's say, much more faster reductions in price and make it more attractive in the long run. So, I mean, I hope that answers your question, not exactly in terms of life cycle cost, but I think it's important to understand it from a tariff and what is actually procured, because those are the prices that drive the market.
Christo?
Yeah, Belen, if I may just echo on what Nandu has shared. I think the very important point is the life cycle expectancy of a typical CSP plant, and I think that is what this technology can offer in terms of 30 to 35 year lifespans, and I think that is what the industry should also be aiming for when setting up and having the discussions with the off-takers and the relevant governments. I think therein lies a great opportunity, and that is certainly something that we need to look in terms of South Africa going forward. That will make a great difference in terms of the overall pricing, as Nandu has also indicated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I usually like to remind people who may be new to the industry that in 2006, when you actually went and did tenders, usually the price for PV, like the tariffs offered to PV, was almost twice as high as it was for CSP at the time, which is why CSP usually didn't have storage, because it was just cheaper, simply. So in 2006 in Spain, the tariff for CSP was 26 cents, if I'm not wrong, euro, and for PV was 45 cents. Now, if you look at how far would they've come in this, like 2006, say 14 years. Now PV is like what, like 1.5? Maybe I'm a bit wild there. Maybe say 2 cents. So it's come down incredibly. Like I think the IRENA came up with a figure of like 76% or something of the sort. With CSP, we've come down like 40-something%. However, like PV, there has been like nearly 600 gigawatts installed compared to not even 6 gigawatts. We'll have 6 gigawatts by the time the project in the UAE is finished. So actually, if you look at like per installation, the learning curve is being much, much, much steeper. And the question I wanted to ask you is, what about the local environment in terms of how much jobs you create, how much wealth it's, kept locally, because it feels to me like, the Black empowerment, for example, it was really good method to make sure, that the companies went and manufactured locally, but that the amount of localization that was expected of CSP versus the amount that was expected of PV was completely different. It was very easy for PV to meet their demands compared to CSP, or like easier, I suppose. So it seems like CSP lives a lot more in local communities. I just wanted to clarify whether this is the point or I'm completely off and this is not the case. Go on, Nandu.
Yeah, Ben, you're right. I think the localization is a key factor in the South African environment completely. And what we found is that initially the localization requirements that came in with the procurement and the bids in the first few rounds were not that onerous on any of the developers. And so they then managed to get the plants financed and closed. However, as the rounds progressed and more opportunity was derived, the local content requirements started increasing. However, with the PV, the local content requirements and with wind tended to plateau at a certain point, because at a certain point, you get to a point where you cannot get any other local available technology to be able to complete the plant, and you have to go overseas. And that creates a bit of a barrier for local content. However, I don't see that in CSP. And one of the reasons why I say that, and I think in the presentation, Christo alluded to it, is that we started off thinking that we could do 30-40% local content, and for Bokpoort we did it. I think we did 40% local content, and mainly because the technology lends itself to it. You're looking at the solar field, the construction of the solar field, the materials in the solar field, everything can be locally produced, locally assembled, and so there's a lot of local content opportunity. And then that can be extended into the valves and the equipment and the process related programming and the actual real value add opportunities. And if you take that further, it can go up to about 60%. And that, we believe that's very attractive for the South African market, because it does do that. And if we can then deliver that with a decent price, as well as bring those plants to the areas where we need the employment the most, I think you have a big solution. Because CSP versus PV and wind, and I don't mean in any way to try to play one technology off the other, and that's not the intention of this discussion. But if you look at all of them, CSP tends to be the highest employer of people as well per megawatt installed, and that also becomes an attractive option for the South African context itself. And that's why we put the whole thing together, and on a balanced overview of bidding requirements, CSP still has a very strong position to play in the market. And I think a lot of that is being understood, and the way the plant is performing is now becoming attractive, and that is adding to the opportunities of and the excitement of CSP. And you're right, after 6 or 7 plants, the technology, there's been a bit of a gap in terms of the next plant to be produced in the country, and that sort of also taints the progress of local development of industry and so on around that. We need a consistent allocation of procurement for CSP to be able to then attract foreign investment into the country, so that you can start technology development and then increase the local content contribution. And I think that will come with maybe certainty in terms of how we procure energy going forward. And we've seen that in PV. I mean, with the amount of PV that has been installed in this country, it is now very competitive, and you see that all around the world. I think we still have a lot to go with CSP, and I think there is potential there as well.
Thank you very much. That's great. And actually, one of the questions said, when are we going to see more CSP in Australia? So maybe this is a good time also to respond to that.
Well, I mean, I think Australia will be silly not to consider it. I think everybody's worried about cost and so on, but I mean, Australia has that resource. I mean, that when I showed you the map of the world of the DNI hotspots, I mean, Australia is one of the most favorable as far as that is concerned. I had the opportunity to speak to quite a large audience of Australians yesterday on the similar subject, and there is some excitement in terms of CSP. I think there's still some contemplation about it everywhere there seems to be. However, I think the more successful projects like Bokpoort and other projects in the UAE as well, and Equa's projects in Morocco as well. So these are then sort of bringing people together and making them understand that there is potential and possibility around it. And I think the Australians are moving in that direction. I trust that we will see more announcements out of Australia with regards to CSP, and I hope that we will be able to share experiences and knowledge with them. I think they have they're on the same line of latitude as South Africa, so there should be no reason why they should at least have a couple that they can celebrate with us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the green hydrogen or the renewable hydrogen maps, and it's predicted, that Chile is going to be a great exporter, Saudi Arabia, of course, and Australia also wants to be in this bulk of like really large exporters. They have great solar resources, but they do need them more than variably, right? You do need them like on a dispatchable basis, and that you need to be looking at. If you don't have water or something of the sort, you need to be looking at CSP.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just to add, sorry, but just to add is that also when they talk about the hydrogen economy, talk about all of the other things, they all need energy, and that energy has to come from somewhere. And CSP could be part and parcel towards the development of an hydrogen economy as well. I mean, there's some really good development in that area to say how do you combine use of CSP to make your hydrogen that you can use in your country's energy mix. So I think the future of CSP is not one in a single box. I think there's going to be quite a lot of spread in terms of the use and the applicability of the technology, and try to have a mixture in terms of delivering on the market. I like to say that I think in South Africa we've been very guilty of procuring energy on a technology basis, and that is always limiting people. So you will have 100 megawatt PV or 100 megawatt wind. I think the procurement should change towards a 100 megawatt solution, in which case you stipulate your availability, your reliability, and so on, and allow the developers then to hybridize and to do whatever they need to do to deliver on that mandate. Because then you will get true competition in very innovative ways, as opposed to in a box kind of procurement.
I couldn't agree more. I think that we need a change of the way we think. You can't keep doing the old things, hoping for new results. So I couldn't agree more. Christo, you want to add something, right?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. And just to also build a little bit on what Nandu has said. Obviously, once these plants are constructed, and the, let's call it, the commercial side is put behind you. It then also presents an opportunity for collaboration between different operators, because once you're in the operations and maintenance phase of any technology for that matter, it actually helps if you've got like in the case of South Africa, we've got a couple of CSP plants in the Northern Cape, and we've only recently started to work together to see how can we collectively support each other and also support the industry. But it also helps to to get a better competitive advantage with OEMs, in terms of the support that they need to render. So that's just also a thought to to consider that once you start with these type of technologies and setting them up in in the various countries, is that to some extent, and I'm not talking the commercial parts, but the operational ends of it, there's opportunity for collaboration, and in that, you will also strengthen the base of the technology in time.
Thank you very much, Christo. I was just like shifting through the questions. If you guys take a look at the questions, if there is any you specifically want to answer, we have about 4 more minutes. I did want to ask, what's next for South Africa and CSP? Are we going to have like big announcements soon, of more projects or more tender rounds? What are you expecting? You guys are like right there, so I'm sure that you're looking for the next thing. So what can you tell me about South Africa as a market?
South Africa as a market, I think, is improving. It's getting very exciting. Right now, we're busy with tendering on what the government calls the risk mitigation program. Essentially, it's an emergency procurement of 2,000 megawatts. Tenders are going in next week, so hopefully we will get something announced in terms of the winning bidders in the next 6 months. That will bring immediately about 2,000 megawatts, and one of the requirements of that 2,000 megawatts is to deliver it by 2022. So the developers are under serious pressure to deliver that, which is fantastic. It's always good to have emergency energy very, very well procured. I think that's the developer's dream. So you know the timelines and you know that there's urgency. So that's what we have now. There's still rumors in the market, and maybe more than rumors, there's some confidence given from signals from the IPP office that we're looking at round 5, which is essentially round 6, because if you notice on my slide, we had things like round 3.5, which is an in-between round. So essentially the 6th round, or the so-called round 5, will be in December. And in that case, the expectation is that there's going to be a large amount of allocation for all the technologies, not necessarily CSP, but we're also trying to influence the thinking around that. What they have started looking at in terms of the integrated resource plan is to have gas turbine capacity allocation, and then looking at what they call proxy solutions. And we believe CSP is a good proxy solution to take on some of that gas turbine allocations. And I don't mean no disrespect to my gas turbine colleagues, but I think it's a very good hedging opportunity. So, but it will all depend on costing. And I think the world is all looking at the cost of CSP versus the cost of the next available technology. And slowly, the markets will start progressing towards what is the cheapest and what is the most reliable. And I think it's our business and our job to ensure that we keep announcing how well Bokpoort is doing, how well every other plant is doing, so that we can show the world that the CSPs in the fleet on the globe are actually doing well. They're doing what they were designed to do, and they actually are reliable. Once you do that, then you become a mature technology, that the go-to technology, and that's what I think we still have a long way to go towards.
Excellent. Christo, have you seen any question that you'd like to answer?
I think no, most of them has basically been covered.
There is one here from Jaron. Perhaps, let me see. Shall I read it out to you?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
It is great to see how Bokpoort is gradually improving its performance over time. Is it possible to elaborate a little bit on how the plant is paid for its production at different periods of the day? What design objectives Aqua had for the plant based on this, and how close or overperform the plant is to those objectives? I think it's important to both developers and government to create exactly a better appreciation of what CSP can add to the grid in South Africa. Thanks for elaborating. It's from Jaron.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. So as I also alluded to in the presentation, we run a model which is called the Aqua Power model, and that sets the design, basically the design base for the plant performance. So it is our aim to be able to meet that design case and really exceed it as far as possible. In the graph that I've shown over the past, 5 to 6 months, we've exceeded it by 2.4%, which then really means that your performance is, from an efficiency point of view, is as good as it can be, because the model, of course, takes into account the fact of DNI that can be, that can affect the performance on a typical daily basis. But that really determines, what your performance should be, and that's what we are then measured against. Budgets are also being based on that, so you can, very clearly, based on the performance, you can set, new budgets for the next year in terms of what revenue should be expected, and then stay on target. So it's great to see that Bokpoort has been able to demonstrate, after the outage over the past 6 months, that this is definitely possible for the technology to do this, and in turn obviously creates more profit and more shareholder value, which is what Aqua Power and all the other shareholders are in business for.
Thank you very much. Well, we're out of time. So I would like to thank you, Nandu, and thank you, Christo, for sharing all of your know-how with us and for keeping us abreast of what's going on with Bokpoort. Hopefully, I'll have you back here in a couple of months with some news as well and other things that you're working on. I certainly hope so. And for now, I'd like to say thank you to all our people in the audience as well for coming in and joining us. We hope that you learned a great deal. I think concentrated solar power is in its way back. Chile, Spain are putting it back on the docket again. It looks like South Africa, might have some movement there too. At the end of the day, we need to be thinking at the system level. We need to stop having these pushes for technology. We've come to a point where the technologies are sufficiently evolved that we need to start thinking about them as, if you like, just pieces of the puzzle, right? And let the developers, take a look and see how they can best use them in order to achieve the cheapest energy for what you need in your country. So with that thinking, I'd like to thank you guys again and say to everyone that we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Belen. Thank you, everybody.